In the 14th century, the Black Death killed between 1/4 and 1/2 of all Europeans. The Middle East was also affected. Around 1/10 of the global population died of the disease, spread by infected fleas transported across the world by rats on trade ships. But still, that did little to negatively influence technological and economic developments in Europe. Population size in Europe returned to pre-pandemic levels 2 centuries after the Black Death. Humanity has survived a few really dangerous and grim events like these. A more recent example is how the city of Hiroshima was rebuilt after the atomic bombing in 1945. Around 140,000 people died, 90% of buildings were at least partially destroyed or reduced to rubble. Only a few days after the catastrophe, however, the nearby bank reopened, there was a limited rail service running, and water pumps were working again. The population of the city returned to pre-destruction levels within only a decade. Now, Hiroshima is a thriving city of 1.2 million people. Two other examples are the collapse of Rome and the Bronze Age collapse. Both brought down impressive civilizations that enjoyed technological and economic progress and had forms of international trade. The Bronze Age collapse happened between 1200 and 1150 BC, when the Mycenaean Greece and Hittite civilizations fell and the Egyptian and Assyrian civilizations severely weakened. To this day, historians aren't completely sure why the Bronze Age collapse happened. After being the first city to surpass 1 million inhabitants and being the seat of the imperial power in the Western Roman Empire for centuries, the city declined dramatically in the 5th century. A few decades after that, the whole empire collapsed. It took 1,400 years until the 1930s for Rome to surpass its peak population again. Sounds quite bad, but really, for local civilizations, it can be said that it's rather the rule than an exception to collapse. But can human civilization as a whole collapse? By civilizational collapse, we mean an event in which society loses the ability to create most industrial and post-industrial technology. This is probably likelier than a whole extinction of humanity, and it would still be pretty horrible. It's difficult to predict how likely it is that civilization as a whole would collapse. So far, luckily, there are no historical examples of collapse events that killed more than 20% of the global population. Modern civilization is very different from the historical civilizations that collapsed. In some ways, we might be able to better handle risks to our civilization, but in other ways, the risks might be higher. In our previous video, we talked about existential threats, some of which historical civilizations didn't have to worry about, like anthropogenic climate change, global pandemics, and nuclear war. Even if these don't make humanity go extinct, they could still collapse human civilization. But let's try and think about what would happen if, for example, an all-out nuclear war would happen. The direct death toll alone could amount to tens to hundreds of millions of people, or maybe even billions. If, in an absolute worst-case scenario, 99% of the world population would die, that would leave 80 million people alive, meaning in terms of population, we will be back to 2500 BC. But would this lead to a collapse? Probably not. Parts of our physical infrastructure like machines, tools, and buildings would still be there and could be used afterwards, which already puts us in a much better position than 2500 BC. Also, the remaining 80 million people could access all of the knowledge humanity has assembled. There's also a decent chance that among the survivors, some have critical jobs like airplane engineers or organic chemists. Also, it's pretty likely there would be some people left with knowledge about agriculture that would help feed the population. Another crucial question is, will we reindustrialize? We think so, yes. Some tools and machines would probably survive the catastrophe and could be used to reverse engineer. But renewable energy might be difficult to recreate at first, which means we'd probably have to rely on fossil fuels like coal first. Currently, however, easily accessible coal is disappearing rapidly. If coal becomes hard to access, a population of 80 million will have an incredibly hard time industrializing. This means we should shut down coal plants as quickly as possible. I mean, we should already do so anyway for our climate, so it's a great extra reason. Overall, it seems likely that humanity will get back on its feet, even if 99% of us vanish. Still, it could take centuries to get back to where we are today. And in any case, such an event would be horrible and we should avoid it at all. costs. We just summarized a chapter from Oxford philosopher Will MacAskill's new book called What We Owe the Future. The book makes a case for caring about our long-term future and explores what we can do. We're making a video series summarizing its most important points. We're visiting Chinese history, the Islamic Golden Age, the possible end of humanity, and more. So subscribe and ring that notification bell to get notified when more episodes come out. Thanks for watching.